Hello, everyone. How are you? How have you been? I have missed you guys the last couple of months. It's been busy and crazy in a great way, and so I wasn't able to come to you guys in April and May, but I am back. It's June. I can't believe it. Half the year is already gone. I told someone the other day that we're going to be Christmas shopping pretty soon. Holidays are going to be coming. It's crazy. Anyway, I'm so glad to be back with you guys. I'm Stephanie Lomax, your host for this evening's HR in the Dark, the video podcast that exposes the dark side of HR. I am also your resident HR strategist an HR expert for your small business. And I am really excited to talk with you guys tonight about social media and what that means to employers as it relates to making hiring decisions, employment decisions, really, all the way around. So if we're talking about recruiting, or if we're talking about making employment actions on current employees, we're going to talk a little bit about what the law says about that. I've got a case for you, which I always try to bring you something real and tangible, in addition to the conceptual things that we need to discuss. But I always try to bring you some type of a case to kind of bring it full circle. And then I've got a couple of pointers for you that you as a small business, or any business really, needs to keep in mind as it relates to social media and what that needs to look like for your organization. So as always, come on, let's go ahead and jump right in because I'm so excited. Okay, so social media really, it's no longer cutting edge, right? It used to be probably 15 years ago because it was new territory, but now it's relatively mainstream. I mean, there's not anything that I can think of that's not associated, or very few things that are not associated with social media in some type of way. Whether that is, websites which get pulled into social media and has definitely a connection with social media, or whether it's the actual social media platforms that are relevant and prevalent in our everyday life. And so that also means that social media has had a huge impact, not only just on our everyday life, but also on how job seekers are finding jobs and how they search for jobs, and how employers are recruiting for candidates. It has become such a popular way to recruit and find talent that it has been coined social recruiting. Go figure, right? Here's some statistics for you. So 80% of employers say social recruiting has helped them find passive candidates. So, as an employer, when you're looking, obviously the talent pool is going to come to you if they are actively looking, or if, because of they're either unhappy or what have you, or they're unemployed. But we all know that some of our best candidates have been passive candidates. So they're not really looking, but if the right opportunity were to come along, they would be willing to make that change. And so 80% of employers have said that social recruiting has helped them find those passive candidates. 70% of hiring managers say they have successfully hired with social media recruiting, which is great. I mean, we're talking about, almost 3/4 here. And then 84% of organizations say that they're using social media recruiting strategy of some sort, with others following suit, another 9 or 10% planning to develop some type of social media recruiting strategy to find candidates for their open positions. So it's happening. And if you're not using social media, if you don't have a social media platform for your organization, you're probably way behind. And then developing the strategy, of course, is a different animal. We'll talk a little bit about that and how to go about doing that before we end the podcast tonight. The challenge is with social media recruiting is that it then lends itself to being a platform where candidates, current employees can vent to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And that's across all platforms, Twitter, Facebook probably being the most common, because that is really where their friends live, right? So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, which is more or less of like another type of search engine, so to speak, and LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, should be kept most professional because that's the platform that it was built on. But people do vent and say things on LinkedIn as well, because they have professional friends that are there that they feel they can have these conversations with. And so because it allows them to do those types of things, they can say great positive things about their current employer or their former employer, or they can say some pretty nasty things about their current employer or their former employer. And so what that means is it can have a severe impact, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that also, what that means. So what can employees say and what can an employer say to or do to an employee who has said something not so positive, right? So the question is that we're really kind of trying to hone on tonight is, can an employer use social media to make employment decisions? And the answer is the most popular answer in HR, which is, it depends, right? So social media reveals information that could potentially be used as a bias or a basis for discrimination. For example, if you get a candidate resume and the candidate's resume's name is Joe Jones, we don't know anything about Joe Jones, right? We can make assumptions, but the minute we go to social media to look up his LinkedIn profile or his Facebook profile, we're going to know a lot more about him based on what we see, right? We're going to know that, we kind of figured that it's a guy, right? But we're going to know potentially about his religious background. We may potentially know about his other, protected classes. And we have to be really careful about that because it does lend to bias. And granted that when he comes in for the interview, we're going to probably do that same thing. But getting to the interview, we may dismiss people from even coming into the interview based on what we see on their social media profile. So we have to be careful about that. And the other thing is, as I mentioned earlier, is that it reveals comments that employees make about their jobs, about their pay and wages, about their boss, about the work that they're doing, about the company. And there are some very specific things that gets a little bit tricky because the National Labor Relations Board has some very specific language and comments and has given guidelines and guidance, I'm putting that in air quotes, right, around what employers, how employers can impose guidelines about what employees can say on social media about those things that I just mentioned. And this doesn't matter whether you are a unionized environment or not. It's called concerted activity. And concerted activity is not specifically related to union-only organizations. They are very clear about that. So they also have a lot to say about how well your social media policy is written or how poorly it is written. Is it too narrow? Is it too broad? Is it too specific? So there's some things we're going to talk about, again, before we end tonight about, the social media policy too and what you need to do. But as it relates to this case, so I want to get into this because I think this is really, really important. So it was a case that the National Labor Relations Board, in 2017, they issued their decision about it, but the actual incident happened, 2 incidents happened in 2012 with a medical transport organization by the name of Butler Medical Transport. So in 2012, there was a disgruntled employee, a former disgruntled employee that posted on Facebook that he believed his termination was a wrongful termination and that it was unfair. A current employee stated in response to this Facebook post that they were really sorry to hear that happened and that they should consider maybe having a conversation with the National Labor Relations Board and maybe getting an attorney and taking Butler Medical Transport to court if they felt like they were terminated. It was a wrongful termination. And what did Butler Medical Transport do? Somebody took a snapshot of the Facebook post, turned it into human resources, and that current employee that made the reply on the Facebook page was subsequently terminated. All right. Then in 2013, so this was in October 2012, this first incident. In January 2013, another Butler Medical Transport employee posted on Facebook some pretty derogatory comments and used quite a few expletives about what appeared to be the transportation he was provided, the vehicle he was provided. He basically was saying that it was broken down because somebody didn't want to pay to get it fixed or pay to have it, or let him to have a new vehicle to use to transport. And it was, within some time frame that it was, like a week went by and it was broke down again. And somebody took a snapshot of that, turned it into human resources, and that employee was subsequently fired as well. So this went to the National Labor Relations Board. It got all the way up to the board. And basically what the National Labor Relations Board said was the employee that made the comment about the former employee that felt like he was terminated improperly, he was terminated unfairly. So employee A that was disgruntled, a former employee B made the comment. Employee B was terminated because of the comment, and National Labor Relations Board said employee B was terminated unfairly and should not have been terminated. The reason that they gave is because the board found, I'm reading this from the article, the board found that the post was for the mutual aid and protection of employees because the discharge was of potential concern to all employees, and the employee asked for support, and employee B, who was terminated secondly, was involved in a common cause with fellow employees. Okay, got that? As it relates to employee C, who was complaining on Facebook about the transportation, while he tried to clean it up prior to his termination by saying he was talking about his girlfriend's vehicle, they did not buy that story. They upheld his termination, stating that his post was not for mutual aid and protection. Further, his post was maliciously false because his vehicle actually had not broken down on the day of the post. So he didn't have really a leg to stand on. But the National Labor Relations Board went a step further and said that the company's social media policy was held to be overly broad. And the company admitted that it was overly broad. So as we're talking about, things that you need to do, there's a couple pieces here. As an employer, you have to be very careful about what it is that you, how you treat employees or potential employees based on their social media activity, right? That's the first thing, because it could be considered that you are blocking concerted activity, which is, again, whether you are a union organization or not, blocking concerted employee activities is against the law, period. So that's number one. And then number two, you have to be mindful of what your social media policy is. So as an employer, what do you need to do and what do you need to know? Number one, you need to create a social media recruiting strategy that will yield you the most qualified candidates for your organization. What does that mean? It's going to be something different for every employer. Why? Every employer's philosophy and recruiting philosophy is different. Every employer's culture is different. Every employer has different types of qualifications that they're looking for that they would consider to be a good fit for their organization. So you've got to, number one, determine what platforms you want to be on, which ones make the most sense for you to be on, and which ones can you manage effectively and consistently to promote your employer brand that's going to get you the candidates that you're looking to hire. So one, you need to develop a really solid social media recruiting strategy. Number two, you need to be consistent with looking at employee or candidate social media profiles. What does that mean? If you're going to look at social media profiles, you're going to go to LinkedIn for every candidate that you're looking to hire, then you need to go to LinkedIn to look at the profile of every candidate that you're looking to hire. So do it for everyone, in other words. Don't do it for one because you think something might be a little fishy, but you don't do it for anybody else. That can get you in trouble because you could be making employment decisions or potential employment decisions, and it could have some adverse impact that you're not aware of. So the best thing to do is to just be consistent. If that's going to be your policy, that you're going to review LinkedIn profiles for every potential candidate, then that's what the policy needs to be. And I don't mean a written policy, but an internal process that you're going to have that's going to be part of what your strategy is when you're talking about recruiting. The third thing is, please put HR in charge of that. That should probably be first and foremost. The reason is because HR is going to know the things that they can and can't do, or they better know the types of things that they can or can't do as it relates to social recruiting. Where can they look? What can they say? What can they use? What can they not use? Your HR person is likely going to be the most qualified person to do that. And certainly I do believe that as part of the process, if you're going to be using social media as a recruiting strategy, which I think you definitely should, with guidelines in place, your managers also need to be aware because they are probably looking at the social media profiles too, if we're being perfectly honest. So they need to be aware of what they can and cannot do. But I would definitely put human resources in charge of actually following through with having the decision-making portion of that process, as opposed to the manager, just because they're going to be more well-versed in it and able and capable of being more consistent with it as well. And then lastly, you need to make sure that you are reviewing your social media policy. Number one, have a social media policy. You definitely need one, but you want to then, once you have it established, you want to review it every now and then in case anything has changed. And then you want to make sure that it meets the guidelines of the National Labor Relations Act. Remember, it does not matter if you are a unionized environment or not. The National Labor Relations Board will swoop in and give their opinion on what you did related to social media and what that policy says. If it even smells like it is blocking concerted activity, they are going to be on it, and likely you could be listed in an article like the one that I just finished reading you about Butler Medical Transport. And, all press is not good press. I don't care what anybody says, particularly when you're violating laws. So 4 things you need to do: create a social media strategy, recruiting strategy, be consistent looking at your social media, at the social media profiles of candidates, put HR in charge of the social media profiling, and then make sure that you have and review your social media policy on a regular basis. Now, do you need help with any of these things? If you do, you know how to reach me, but in case you don't know how to reach me, I'm going to tell you right now. You can find me on LinkedIn, social media, of course, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, HR Pro, the number 4, YOU.com. And then that's the website. And then social media profiles are HR Pro, the number 4, YOU. Certainly come visit me there. You can subscribe to the podcast directly on the website. And you can also book a consultation, a complimentary discovery call. If you go to the website /calendar, you can book a time to have a conversation with me about this social media recruiting strategy and making sure that you're doing the right things as it relates to social media and your current employees and potential employees, or anything else HR related that we've talked about or that we haven't talked about. We've talked about a lot. This is the 2nd season, so we've covered a lot of ground. But in case you don't remember, prior episodes are also on the website, and you can subscribe to have the podcast delivered right to your email if you have not done so already. I am looking forward to talking with you all next month. Be sure you follow me to find out next month's topic. I am looking forward to sharing more HR information with you. And I do want to share that coming in June, you can book me to do training sessions on this and several other topics Its corporate HR training is coming to an office near you. So if you're looking to have some training done for your staff, particularly with your managers and your executives, make sure you reach out to me to get that booked. We can certainly talk about what that needs to look like for your organization. And I'm excited to be here as a resource. You know that. So I look forward to talking with you next month. It's going to be July. Crazy. And I believe it's the 3rd of July because the 4th of July is on a Thursday, I believe. So July 3rd, we will drop the next podcast episode. Make sure you follow me on social media to grab that topic. And I look forward to talking with you then. Have a great night and enjoy your month of June. Bye.